Usual here for you this evening, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this visit. It isn't every day that we have the opportunity to visit the studio of a real live artist. I'm talking about John Philip Murray's studio near Lisarda, just outside Macroom, which is a relatively new studio. And we're going to take you now, with the help of John here, on a tour of the studio and maybe gain some bit of insight into the life of an artist and the birth of a painting. John, thank you very much for inviting us along to your studio.
More than welcome. I'm delighted to have you.
First of all, John, maybe you could just give us a little bit of background about yourself before we start looking around.
Very good. Well, I was born in 1952 in Dublin, and after I finished secondary school, I went to the National College of Art and Design, and I taught for some years then after that around secondary schools. And we moved down to Cork in 1986. So when we moved here, I had the use of a garage, which was my studio for the next 20 years. And because it wasn't a purpose-designed building, it had all its little shortcomings and so on. So 2006, I built this new studio, which allowed me to cover all the shortcomings of the old one. And I have my lovely light, I have my layout,
materials and so forth.
All my materials laid down.
It certainly is a very bright studio, and the studio isn't just a room.
Yeah,
it's much more than a room.
it is. Yeah.
Give me some sense, first of all, and we'll be looking around now. What did you have to take on board when you were building the studio?
Okay, well, two of the major things were light and space. Space both around me and space above my head. So the light, the first thing with the light is I've all the windows up high and they're facing north. So it means that the even light from the north is what I get throughout the day. So I don't get a very bright period at one point and then a dull period at another, because if you're working particularly with colour, if you're working on something, you want it to be as stable as possible. So I have windows up high. I don't have windows to the outside where I could get distracted looking at the changing seasons, but yes. I have my light, I have my space, plenty of space to move around. And those were the two biggest considerations.
Yes.
And of course it has to be insulated and dry to protect the works as well.
Yes, and secure, of course, too, because
yeah.
paintings obviously are treasures. Now, you also have access to your materials. You've set this up so that you've got good access to materials.
That's right.
What was that consideration?
Well, particularly if you change material, let's say you might be working in oils one day, you might be working in watercolor another day, pastel another day. You don't want to be tripping over one when you're working with the other.
Okay,
so the first thing I did was I made this little trolley which has all my oil paints out in little sections on it. So I've tubes for those. I've place for the various turpentines and oils and mediums. My brushes. I've got a jar with, if you're working on something and you need to change your brush, well, you can just pop into a little jar of turpentine, which is sunk into the surface of the table, so that you're not going to knock it over with a careless elbow, something like that. So I have all these here, and then below that I've got my spares. So I've other paints in there, so if I run out, I don't have a little cushion there to before I need to go to the art shop, and then various solvents and so on.
Yes, can you just open those doors wide?
Yeah.
For the
they're
The camera shot
they're
there,
in
John.
there. Okay.
Yes.
So spares, and then I've other materials. These are oil bars or oil sticks. They're for use with oil paint or on their own, and
Yes.
then charcoals and other things that I might need to have to hand. Okay, so those are all in that.
And John, can I just ask you? I mean, these are little tubes of paint. These things are dreadfully expensive, aren't they?
Yeah. Depending on the medium. If you're looking at they're in different series, and so certain pigments will be very dear. So you'd be maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 euro for each tube. And when you're covering large areas, you'll go through quite a few of those.
Yes, I can imagine. I don't think it's something that we always necessarily consider when we look at a painting, that really there are expensive materials gone into this painting.
Yeah. And then there are other things like brushes which wear out, and particularly with the oils, because it's quite a physical thing, you'd be going through those fairly regularly.
Yes. What's this called?
That's the palette.
Yes.
And you put out your various blobs of paint on that.
Yes.
And mix them, maybe using a knife.
Yes, palette knife.
Palette knife.
Can we have your around
yeah,
this side?
yeah.
Yes.
So that's the palette knife. That's the one that it's a flat knife. You'd be mixing those with that one, and then this is the painting knife, where you'd actually use that to apply the paint.
Yes.
So as well as the brushes, if you're working with a lot of very thick paint, you might find it easier to trowel it on with the palette knife.
Excellent. Okay, now can we move to this place here just along? So we'll let this materials bench for the moment. So moving on to this bench then, John.
Yeah. So this is where I would do my small drawings and watercolours. So I'd have a board, and I'd attach my papers to the board and work away at this. I'd use the high chair. Okay.
Oh, yes.
And then underneath here I have various drawers for different materials. So for example, this is for pastels, and I can slide this out here, and I can put it up on top of the trolley and work away at my easel in pastels. Then when I'm finished with that, it goes away neatly.
Yes.
And in that goes. So I'd have drawing materials on that. I'd have other acrylics and inks and glues and things like that on this one. And then on this big one, I've got pigments.
Yes,
So,
can we just pull that out a bit there for the camera?
it's a heavy one.
Fine, I think. Yeah.
So these are pigments that I bought in Dublin when I was a student. So they're sugar bags of pure pigment. So that's the colour that's at the centre of any paint, whether it's watercolours or oils or even pastels.
Yes.
Pigment is the colour, and that's bound with linseed oil or safflower oil to make an oil paint, or with gums.
And what does pigment come from?
Pigment comes from various things. So you've got, in this case, you've got those would be mostly what they call earth pigments.
Yes.
So they're
Let's see if we can get it back in.
Oh, it goes in easily enough. It's just that it's heavy.
Yes. Okay.
So the earth pigments are literally ground up pieces of different coloured earths or rocks, and then the more precious ones would be ones like lapis lazuli, which has to come all the way from Afghanistan, and it was traditionally in the Renaissance times, that's what the Virgin's robe was painted with, because it was the most precious pigment, the dearest one, the one that had to make that journey from Afghanistan. So it's a very deep blue. It's ultramarine is another name for it, and it may be flecked with gold. So that stone then is ground into a fine powder, and that fine powder then would have been mixed with oil, or in the case of a fresco, where paint is directly put onto fresh plaster, it'd be just mixed with water, painted onto the lime plaster like a watercolor, and the plaster dries, and the pigment becomes part of the wall then, and so that's why frescoes last so very well, and they're so very clear. So that's pigment is at the heart of it. So pastels are like the pigment of they're nearly pure pigment, just bound together with binder.
Okay.
When people refer to things as being pastel colored, they mean pale colored. They don't mean pastel, because if you look again at something like that, that's a piece of pastel, and it's a vibrant, strong color.
Yes.
It's not what the
pale, yeah.
It's not pale, no.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
isn't it?
because they're pure, they're
Yes.
they're as direct as you'll get.
So it's really a misnomer
A
to
misnomer.
call something
A pastel shade, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, if we come up this
Yeah.
way, we might just have a peep into this cupboard, John,
Oh yeah.
and see what is behind it. Now, I know this is a real Aladdin's cave, so we're not going to be able to make our way into it entirely, but you might explain to us how it works.
In here is where I keep my finished work. So when it's been painted and framed up, it needs to be protected, and obviously then I need to keep the working area clear for making new work.
Yes.
So I have a store here, and in the store I've got big work here, pieces that are, let's say, up to 5 foot by 4 foot, that sort of size, and they're on another trolley. So
Yes.
this trolley can wheel out easily, and when it wheels out, I'd bring it all the way to the back wall, the front wall of the studio, and then I've access to right and left, and more works in there. So
Fantastic. So this is the Aladdin's cave.
this is the Aladdin's cave.
Okay.
And it means that the work is protected, because what you want to keep away is the damp. You want to keep away moisture, and you want to keep away heat, because in heat molds can grow very easily. So if there's moisture and heat, it's bad for the paintings. So in here is a working temperature, but when you open the doors here, you're into a much cooler situation.
Yes,
So
and of course they have to be protected on all sides at the floor end as
that's
well.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. They're up off the floor. None of them are down onto that.
Okay, I must say that just looking around so far at what we've seen, which I suppose really is the artist, the tools of the artist, and the storage area of the artist. But if we can move on now to maybe the creative side,
Okay.
and have a look at how a painting is born.
Okay.
Okay? So maybe we can do that.
Very good. So
Somebody once wittily described childbirth as something that's conceived in pleasure and delivered in pain. Is this true of paintings?
I'm afraid so. Yeah. I always enjoy it when somebody is at a painting class, and they love coming to that painting class once a week and painting for an hour or something like that. They say, "Oh, it must be lovely to be doing it all the time, because it must be so relaxing." And I always say, yeah, it is. But in reality, it's a very fraught process for a lot of the time. But it's like life itself. You've got 95% or more, which is ordinary, routine, drudgery. Things that you have to go through, hoping for that 5% or less, where things are going to get exalted a little bit.
Yes. What inspires you? Where does it all start?
Okay. the funny thing about working in a visual medium, you'd imagine that all the inspiration or all the driving force must come from visual things. Now, I'd say that most of my work comes from ideas. It comes from written words. It comes from talk. Now, obviously, you have a skill. You have a developed skill, which means that you can accurately describe something in a visual way. So if I wanted to do a drawing of yourself, that I would feel that I had the necessary skills to do that. But what I like to do is describe the whole process as one where you have your skills. Those are like a given in this situation. On from that, then you use those skills and your materials and so on, and you define an idea that you have, and that's part of the beginning of a process, which is like prose. Okay, so you're gathering and you're assembling ideas and you're seeing things working or not working or whatever, but then you're taking that along on this journey. It's a route that has a beginning. You know where the beginning is, but while you have an intention that it's going to go somewhere, you can't predict that with any certainty. So that when you start that journey, you have an idea, committed to paper. You see, oh, I've committed it to paper, but that wasn't really the idea that I had, and then you modify it, and you, all right, that's working, and this isn't working, and then
it is taking charge.
It is taking charge, exactly. Yes. Yeah, because if you simply say, I have this idea, I'm carrying it out, and that's the way it's going to end, it'll become wooden. So you have to allow it to be part of that process. I describe myself as a conduit. It passes through me, but when it comes to its conclusion, I'm as surprised as any onlooker would be. It
surprised me now by taking me through some of the steps of your creativity.
Okay, so let's use a lino cut.
Okay.
That's a nice contained process. So with the lino cut, with these particular ones, I wanted to do a series of images for Christmas cards.
Yeah.
So what I did was I started by working out a drawing. Now this drawing shows the large areas of flat black in this case, and large areas of white, in which then there are other smaller areas with thin lines. Now with the lino cut, the thin lines are the difficult bit. The big spaces you either gouge out for a light colour, a white colour, or whatever colour your paper is going to be, and for the dark areas then you...
Okay, so can you show me how you do that with the lino?
Okay, so the first thing is...
So this is first,
that's the drawing.
So you draw this.
I draw that,
and when that's done...
I work out where the darks and the lights are going to be. Now, in something like this, to suggest the edge of something there, even though this is going to be black and this is going to be black, or I suggest that ends up at the corner there. So I have to have that worked out in my mind where this is going to go. Then I get a piece of lino.
So is this ordinary lino?
Ordinary lino, battleship lino.
Okay, let's hold that so the camera gets over it.
So that has that's been made with cork, linseed oil, and a fabric backing. Yeah. And so it was the standard thing that was put on floors, but it's a nice, easy medium to work with, because the first thing you'll do is transfer that image, paint it on in ink onto the surface.
Yeah.
Then you decide, having got that image down, you know which bits are going to be cut and which bits are going to be left.
Yes.
Okay, and then you would get a gouge, and you'd mark things out with the gouge, and then you'd scoop the areas out that you wanted to be scooped out.
Yes.
Okay, and then when that's done, the next stage of the process, you would get some ink,
Yes.
spread the ink onto a nice flat glass panel. Okay, so put a little dab of that there, and then you would get a roller. You'd roll this way and that until it's even onto the roller.
Yes.
You'd position your
Lino.
lino. You'd ink it again from all directions to make it as even a covering of ink as you could. You put your roller away.
Yes.
Then you would get you get paper, and you'd put your paper carefully down. Now you'd have measurements made, let's say on another board. You'd put this down in such a way that you'd be able to align your paper correctly, so that
Okay.
you get the border that you want.
Okay.
Okay. So when you have that done, then you would put your paper on top of the inked lino.
Yes.
And then the back of a wooden spoon, you'd press the back of the paper onto the ink
Yes.
as hard as you can, so that it takes it up as evenly as you can. And then all things being equal, you peel that away, and you've got a reverse image of the image that you have cut out of the lino. Now this is a reject because
It's got a bit smudged.
it got smudged, yeah.
Yes.
So the paper slipped a bit on the process, but it's useful just as an example of how the thing works.
Okay.
Okay. So this is what you would see as a viewer. You wouldn't be aware of the long processes that has gone into making that, and it's a good example of how any painting or any print that you see finally framed up on a wall has had a journey to get there. It hasn't arrived out in
Okay,
out
and
of a
let's
vacuum.
go and see the big guns now on the other side of
Okay.
the studio.
Okay, that's us.
So the big guns are behind us now.
Behind us, yeah.
And very nicely veiled. What are you going to show us, John?
Well, I'll do a little bit of drama here. It's always nice in a situation like this
Yes.
to expose things in a certain way. So just like we were talking about the print earlier, and the fact that it's a process, a painting starts as an idea and then has all these little steps along the way before it ends up as the final thing. So I've got an easel here, and on the easel I've got a board with various working drawings. On the wall behind I've got big working drawing. Well, they're big drawings. They're more than working drawings. They're finished drawings, but they were the things that actually drove the working drawings. And then behind this, on the wall here, I've got a finished framed big drawing, which is the kind of culmination of that process,
Okay.
or part culmination, because there's going to be a series from
Okay.
this.
Will we have an unveiling?
We'll have an unveiling here. So we can.
There we go.
Okay. Okay.
So this is an artist's easel. This is what we stumble across now when we're around Gugan Barra or on the Wicklow Gap. I think I might move you to this side, John, because I think the camera might be more interested in you than it is in me at this point in time.
Oh, do you know where you'd find one of these? It would be halfway up the road above Carriganimma, which is where I first met our famed man Danjo.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a set of working drawings. Now, the ideas for the working drawings happened from these pictures behind. Now, they're in response to a poem by
You must come with me now.
a man called Micheál Fanning, who was a poet from Dingle, and Micheál in 1993 dedicated a poem to me, and I responded to him by doing a suite of 12 drawings. So one of the lines in his poem that he dedicated me to was to do with a stone ditch boundary up beyond. Now, this was part of a poem about a small farmer, a hopeful, sanguine farmer going off to build a stone wall up on the side of a mountain, and the poet celebrated the hopefulness of the farmer, and then at the same time he had a question about the point or the pointlessness of that. And then he made a comparison between that and the act of writing, where the poet is using words, verbs, nouns, the infinitive, to make his storm-strafed wall, as he put it. So I did these bare charcoal drawings down in Kilreelig, a wild place, and then I revisited. The poet unfortunately died, a young man, 56, a couple of years ago, and I did these. I was down in Kilreelig again, revisiting the place, and I started these to kind of celebrate him. So I found it wasn't a stone ditch boundary, but it was a fence up beyond. So that was a starting point. Then it moved to this one, where we have an image of a poet declaiming his poetry, and so he's there with his book, and there's a wall in there, you know, yes, a stone top on it. Then there's an arch, looking through an arch to whatever is beyond that arch, and then there's a roll of fabric, and the fabric is the same fabric, the stripy fabric that would be on the walls of a Commedia dell'arte or Punch and Judy show, because Micheál was a great man for following Beckett's kind of all art is failure, and so on and so forth. So there are little references like that. So at each stage, then I'd pick up parts of these, like the bits of Punch and Judy, the hand with the book in it, all the different types of Punch and Judy tents, and then a skeleton, because there's a skeleton floating in the background here. The skull. I have a full-size moulded skeleton, and then that became a central image. So we're seeing the back of the tent, yes, and it's up to us then to go in there and perform.
See what is beyond. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So under here then is the finished drawing of that series, and this is showing all the different elements that are in the drawings on the back and on the working drawings.
Okay.
So
it's a finished charcoal.
That's a finished charcoal drawing.
Yes. And presumably, if one wanted to or not, could one move on to do oils of this then as the next step, as it were?
Yeah, that is this is a long-term project now. This is going to take me another 2 years to complete, at least another 2 years, because there are other aspects. Like in this case, I'm celebrating poetry and the poet, because particularly in what I was saying there about the whole act of making, you turn the poetry into this prose. Okay, so now then under here we've got a long commission that I did of it's my uncle, who's a monk in Glenstall.
Okay, can you come up to this side?
I'll go up to this side.
Yes.
And so rushing through the story of how this came about, my uncle came down here to visit us to baptise our son John Louis back in 1991. Yes. And he saw a portrait that I had done of Bernadette, which is in reality is about that size. And he said, it was 50 years since my profession, and one of the things that we're allowed is to have our portraits painted. I've resisted up to now, but now that I see this one you've done of Bernadette, I might ask you to do it. So that's all of us, himself and myself and Bernadette, holding our little bundle, Jean-Louis, and his godparents, friend of ours, Killian, and Bernadette's sister, up at the altar in Kilmurray. So that's how this all started. So then that's him as a young man in 1944 at my 1943 at my parents' wedding. That's would you recognise the little boy in that?
Is that you?
I'm afraid that's me.
One of your most saintly modes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yes.
1959. So
Yes.
he was about 44 then. Then this was a portrait of him that I didn't finish. Yeah, and so that was one that I left aside, and that was him in 2006. And then this was the image of him in 2009. So he's
that's an oil, isn't it?
that's an
They're
oil.
all oils.
They're all oils. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's possession of Glenstall Abbey now.
Excellent. And
Okay.
now?
And then this is one which is, I suppose, it's a good metaphor, if you like, for
Can you come to
why
this?
I work. You've got some of my early influences, which would have been to do with trees and how there's a parallel between the tree and ourselves. So that's the outside. This is the built environment with the arches, and we've constructed our own reality. And then at the centre of it all is ourselves, a vague human being. So it's not a particular person. It's all of us. So that's the big painting, and that was the working drawing that started it.
I see.
Yeah. So
Excellent.
okay.
Very good. John, we could probably spend the rest of the week here. And again, it probably is best maybe to condense it to some extent. Tell me about where people can see your paintings.
Well, the easiest thing is to go to my website, johnphilipmurray.com, 1L, AY. That's the first thing. There is a contact button, so if for example somebody was very interested in coming out and seeing more of the studio, more of the work, they can contact me through that.
Yes.
And then I'm going to be having I have a Facebook page, which is John Philip Murray Painter. So every so often, I'm not very good at this yet, but
Yes.
every so often I'll be putting up, maybe once a month, put up images of new work, or if there's an exhibition coming up. So for example, I might my last solo exhibition would have been back in 2010. So I had a show in at County Hall in the exhibition space there in the Cork Arts in there.
Yes.
Or previous that year I had a two-person show with Paddy Graham in the West Cork Arts Centre. So I do show maybe once or twice a year. So in a good year.
And that information is on the website.
And that will
as
be
it
on the
comes up,
website as it
whatever
comes
is
up.
coming up again next time round. But of course, many of your paintings can now be seen in public buildings.
Yeah, so let's say Allied Irish Banks have one, UCC,
Yes.
they're in various collections.
And you're also exhibited at the RHA in Dublin, yes?
That's right. Actually, this portrait of my uncle was up there this year, and so yeah.
Yeah, it's going back up there again, I think, is it?
It's going it's going to Glenstall now.
Oh, it's going to Glenstall
Yeah,
next.
it has had its time in the public.
Ah, yes, okay.
So it's back to the monastery.
Okay, so it has been a fascinating journey.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting us along today.
You're welcome.
As I said earlier, and I do mean it very sincerely, we could spend an awful lot of time here looking and listening to your comments and your insights into the life of an artist. Did we miss anything in particular that you'd like to say?
Oh, I think that's covered it all. I mean,
Yeah, well, we wish you luck with the new studio, and I know you were very generously opened it to the public some time ago.
that's right. That's right. Cork County Council had an initiative for Culture Night, so in conjunction with the Arts Office there,
Yes.
we opened it up. So lots of people visited for that, and I reopened it again then for friends and neighbours. So we had a very good time
Very
seeing the
pleasant
work
time,
and chatting.
Yeah, and of course the setting here in the countryside is really lovely, isn't it? The woodlands, and
Gorgeous.
we're standing here in an autumn evening when the golden leaves are all around us.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. It's no wonder that John Philip Murray can be so creative. He's out here near Lisarda, can be found again on the web, and of course on Facebook, as he just said. It's been a tremendously insightful and interesting journey for us today. Thank you very much, John Philip Murray.